He was a billionaire who had it all: power, fame, fortune. But when he got his black maid pregnant and coldly turned his back, he thought the past was buried for good. Until one look into the baby's eyes changed everything. What secrets did his father take to the grave? What truth waited in the red farmhouse? Stay with us. This is a story of betrayal, redemption, and the woman who saved a broken man's soul. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you never miss a single moment of our life-changing content. Like and share this video to spread stories that matter. This is more than just entertainment. Every tale we tell carries a deep, meaningful moral lesson designed to inspire, uplift, and transform. Billionaire got his black maid pregnant and denied her, until he saw the baby's eyes. My name is Ethan Ward. To the world, I am a billionaire. CEO of a tech empire. Private jets. Ocean view mansions. Diamond watches. But beneath the wealth, I was once just a boy from a broken home. And the truth is, the person who made me a man, the person who saved me from myself, was a woman the world never saw coming. Her name was Grace, and she was my maid. I first saw her the day after my 31st birthday. I was hungover, angry at the world, angry at myself. Another headline had come out about my father. A man who built a fortune, then burned everything, his family, his empire, before dying alone. I was not grieving him. I was afraid I would become him. And in that fog of bitterness, Grace walked into my life. Brown skin glowing like polished mahogany. Eyes that did not flinch at my silence. A quiet grace, fitting of her name. She spoke only when needed. Cleaned faster than anyone I had hired. But it was not her hands that changed me. It was her soul. I remember the first time I raised my voice at her. She had placed my late mother's photo on the piano. I snapped, shouted, slammed the door. That night, I found a note on my bedroom table. In simple handwriting, it read, "People we lose do not live in photos. They live in what we become after them." No name, no signature. But I knew. It was her. That was the first time I truly saw Grace. Not as a maid, but as a woman who carried storms inside her, and still chose to be kind. Weeks passed. Then months. I started waking up earlier. Stopped drinking. Watched her from my study window. She hummed while she worked. Old jazz tunes. Gospel melodies. Like she carried a world I had never touched. I asked her one morning why she never listened to music with headphones. She smiled. A soft, heartbreaking smile. I grew up where we could not afford silence. Music had to fill the air, or sorrow would. That was the day I invited her to dinner. As equals. It was never meant to go further than that. But fate has its own plans. We talked for hours. About struggle, loss, faith, love. She told me she had raised her younger siblings alone. That she never went to college. That every dollar she earned she saved, for a future she was not sure would come. Her strength was not loud. It was quiet, steady, undeniable. And one night, in the middle of a rainstorm, she kissed me. Or maybe I kissed her. All I know is, that night changed everything. When she told me she was pregnant, I froze. Not with joy, not with hope, but fear. The media, the board, my name. I saw scandal where there should have been miracle. And I denied her. Flat out. Take care of it, I said coldly, pretending I was someone else. She looked at me for a long time. Then walked out. No crying. No yelling. No begging. Just silence. And in that silence, I began to crumble. I drank again. Flew to France. Then Dubai. Anything to forget. But nothing drowned her voice. Nothing dulled the guilt. Months passed. No word from her. And then one morning, there was a knock at my gate. My housekeeper said, "Sir, someone left a baby." And a note. I rushed outside. The baby was wrapped in a blanket I recognized. The same one Grace always folded when cleaning the nursery room, before we ever needed one.
He was tiny, peaceful, and then he opened his eyes. They were mine,
but they were hers too.
Deep, honest, brave, and I broke.
I held him to my chest and cried like I had never cried before. Inside the note, Grace wrote, "I never needed your money.
Just your truth.
He will know his father, if his father chooses to become a man worth knowing." That day I changed. I stepped away from the company for 6 months. I raised my son,
learned how to hold a bottle, change a diaper,
pray without asking for something. But I did not know where she had gone. Until one snowy evening, I found an address written faintly on the back of the note. A shelter for single mothers on the outskirts of town.
I went. She was there,
teaching a group of teenage girls how to sew.
She turned, saw me.
Her eyes did not widen.
Her lips did not move.
But her hands trembled. And in mine, our son cooed softly.
She took a step forward. Not toward me,
but toward the child in my arms. Her hands reached out, almost instinctively. And as she cradled him close, her eyes welled with tears she had held back for too long. He reached up and touched her cheek.
A single tear slipped down.
She kissed his tiny fingers.
Then looked at me. Not with bitterness.
Not with rage. But with a question. "Are you ready to stop running, Ethan?" I could barely speak. My voice caught in my throat. "I am not the man I was," I said softly.
"But I will become the one he needs.
And the one you deserve." She studied me for a long moment. Then, without a word, she placed our son back into my arms.
And walked away. Not out of spite,
but to let me follow, if I truly meant it.
I stood frozen.
Snow falling gently on my shoulders. The boy in my arms had fallen asleep. His warmth against my chest felt like forgiveness. I looked down the path where she had gone. The shelter door was still slightly ajar. A golden light glowing from within. Like a second chance waiting.
I took a breath. And stepped forward.
She had stopped at the end of the hall. Her back turned to me. Shoulders still trembling beneath her worn wool shawl. The kind of quiet that hurt to listen to filled the space between us. I took another step forward.
And then another.
My voice barely rose above a whisper.
"Grace."
I came here to give him what he needs, but I realized, it is you who taught me how to become it.
She did not turn around.
But I saw her hand rise to her face, wiping away what I knew were tears she had promised herself she would never let me see again. My son stirred in my arms, opened his eyes again, and just like the first time, they reminded me of the truth I had spent a lifetime avoiding. That real love is not always gentle.
It breaks. It bends. It tests. But when it is true, it returns. Even if wounded. Even if scared.
I did not come for forgiveness, I said slowly. I came for the chance to earn it. The words hung in the cold air.
And then, she turned. Not quickly.
Not dramatically. But with the dignity of a woman who had waited too long for a man to become honest.
She looked at me. At our son. And for the first time, she smiled.
But not with her lips.
Her eyes softened. The armor dropped. And she whispered, "Then come inside."
The door closed behind us. The world outside muffled.
I looked around. Plain walls. A few cracked tiles.
The hum of a radiator barely keeping the room warm.
And yet,
it felt like the safest place I had ever stepped into. Grace took our son from my arms.
Held him close. Then looked at me once more.
"I do not need you to fix everything, Ethan. I just need you to show up."
I nodded. Words felt too small.
I sat beside her on the couch. Our son giggled softly, reaching for both our faces at once.
Grace kissed his forehead. And
I looked at the woman I once denied. The woman who never stopped believing in more. And in that quiet room, filled with nothing but heartbeats and hope, I knew. This was the beginning.
Not the end.
And this time, I would not run. The days that followed were slow,
gentle, unfamiliar.
Mornings began with the smell of oatmeal and warm milk, not espresso shots and boardroom calls. I would wake to the sound of our son babbling in the crib. Grace had found second-hand and painted sky blue. She added little stars on the side,
with her own hands.
I watched her one night, quietly from the doorway, as she painted them, one stroke at a time,
delicate, patient,
as if each star was a prayer for the future.
And I,
a man who once lived by numbers and mergers, had never seen anything more beautiful. Grace spoke little of the months we had been apart. She never cursed me, never threw the past in my face. But there was a stillness in her, the kind that does not need to be loud to be heard.
It made me work harder, to listen, to unlearn, to show up.
One morning, as she folded laundry, I said, "Let me take care of you both.
Move in with me. No staff. Just us." She paused,
held a tiny onesie close to her chest,
then met my eyes.
"I am not looking to be rescued, Ethan. I am looking to be respected." That hit deeper than I expected.
Because I knew.
Money had always been my crutch, my way of fixing what I had broken, without facing who I had become. So instead of offering more money, I offered time,
presence, consistency. Weeks passed, then 2 months.
Every Sunday, we visited her old church, sat in the back pew with our son between us.
At first, people stared.
Whispers filled the air like smoke. The Billionaire and the Maid.
A scandal-turned sermon.
But Grace held her head high.
She never flinched.
And slowly, they stopped whispering, because they saw what I had begun to see. She was not beneath me. She was beyond me. One evening, after tucking our son in, she stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. The city lights flickered outside, but her eyes were distant. "What are you thinking?"
I asked. She hesitated, then whispered,
"I still wake up wondering if you will disappear again." Her honesty struck like thunder.
I walked to her,
wrapped my arms around her from behind, pressed my lips to the crown of her head,
and said,
"If I ever leave again, it will be with you by my side."
She closed her eyes, leaned into me,
but I felt the tremor in her hands. Because love, once broken, does not heal with words. It heals with truth.
And time.
The next morning, I called my lawyer, told him to draft a living trust, put everything, in our son's name, and Grace as the sole guardian. If I failed them again, they would never have to depend on my mercy, only on her strength. The same strength that saved me. Later that night, Grace saw the document on my desk. She read it in silence, then turned to me with eyes full of disbelief. "You are giving it all away?"
I nodded.
"Not giving it away. Giving it meaning." She shook her head slowly. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Do you know what this means to me?"
I stepped closer. "No."
"But I know what you mean to me."
And in that moment,
she finally believed me. That night, we did not speak much. We did not need to. She rested her head on my chest as we lay in the quiet. The rhythm of our breathing became the only sound in the room. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because I had money, not because I had power, but because I had finally done something right, without expecting anything in return. In the weeks that followed, I began to rebuild more than just trust. I rebuilt myself. I returned to the company, not as the cold executive they once feared, but as a man who had learned that leadership begins at home. I cut meetings in half, started a new foundation in Grace's name, to support working mothers, mothers like her, who carried the weight of the world with no applause. When I showed her the foundation documents, she cried, openly, not because of the money, but because someone finally saw her, and all the women who had been invisible for far too long. One evening, as we walked through the community center where her foundation now funded classes and daycare, She paused by a little girl sitting alone with crayons. The girl looked up.
Shy. Curious.
Grace sat beside her.
No hesitation. No ego.
Just the same quiet love that once healed me. After a moment, she turned to me and said, "These children are our future. But they are also our mirror. How we treat them says everything about who we are."
I stood there stunned,
realizing that the woman I once denied was now the compass guiding not just me, but hundreds of others. Back home, as we put our son to bed, he reached up and tugged on my collar. "Dada," he said softly. It was the first time he had said it. My knees nearly buckled. Grace covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks.
I kissed his forehead, then looked at her.
I will never forget who gave him the courage to speak his first word.
She touched my hand. "You did, Ethan.
You gave him the safety." And for the first time, I understood what love truly was. Not something we feel, but something we build. Daily, deliberately, devotedly, brick by brick, truth by truth. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. But just when I thought life had settled,
a letter arrived. No return address.
Just my name, scrawled in familiar handwriting I had not seen since childhood. I opened it slowly,
hands trembling, heart racing. Inside, a single sentence.
"There are truths about your father you were never told.
Come alone." I read the sentence again, and again,
as if the meaning would shift with each glance.
But it did not.
The words were simple,
direct, haunted.
"There are truths about your father you were never told.
Come alone." No signature, no location.
Just a phone number scribbled at the bottom. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the letter like it might vanish if I blinked. My hands began to sweat. The past clawed its way back into my chest. My father, the man I had spent my life trying not to become, was reaching from the grave. Grace entered the room quietly, saw the letter in my lap. She sat beside me, waited, not pressing, just present. I finally turned to her. "It is from someone who knew my father. They want to meet." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you trust them?"
"No," I said.
"But I cannot ignore it."
She reached for my hand, held it tightly, then go.
"But promise me."
Her voice trembled.
"Promise me you will come back whole." I kissed her knuckles. "I promise nothing will break me again." She looked down at our son, asleep in the crib, then whispered, "Because now, you have something to return to." The next morning, I packed light. No driver. No security. Just me. I dialed the number from the letter. A raspy voice answered. "You are Ethan Ward?"
"Yes." There was a pause.
"Then meet me at the old train station.
East platform. Midnight. Bring no one." Click. The line went dead.
The drive was long. Each mile peeled back a layer of memory. My father's fists slamming the dinner table. My mother's silence. The broken windows. The locked bedroom door. But something else lingered. Something I could never name. The feeling that my childhood had been built on a lie. The station was nearly abandoned. Rust on the steel beams. Old advertisements peeling from the walls. The clock above platform 3 was stuck at 11:09. I stood alone. Shadows stretched long under flickering lights. And then I saw him. A man in a faded trench coat. Gray stubble. Eyes sharp as cut glass. He stepped out from behind a pillar. "You look just like him." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" He exhaled slowly. "I was your father's lawyer."
And his friend. Until the end. I tensed. "Why now?" He pulled out an envelope. Thick. Sealed with wax. "Because he left something for you. Something I was told to give only when you became a better man than he ever was." I reached for it. But he pulled it back. "Are you that man, Ethan?" His voice was sharp, demanding. I looked him in the eyes, thought of Grace, of my son, and I said, I was not, but I am becoming him, one choice at a time. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a key, and a slip of paper with 3 words, The Red Farmhouse. I turned to ask him more, but the man was already walking away, disappearing into the mist of the tracks. I stared down at the key, cold, heavy, and familiar in a way I could not explain. A storm was rising, not outside, but inside me, because I knew, whatever waited at that red farmhouse, was not just about my father's truth. It was about mine. The red farmhouse stood at the edge of an overgrown field, its paint faded and chipped, but still intact, like a forgotten memory refusing to be erased. The wind whistled low through the trees as I stepped out of the car. The key burned cold in my hand. I stood before the door, heart thudding, not with fear, but anticipation. Something inside me knew this place. The creak of the porch beneath my feet, the scent of pine and rust in the air. This was not just my father's secret. It was my origin. I opened the door slowly. Dust danced in the slanting sunlight. Furniture covered in white sheets. A quiet stillness lingered, as if time had bowed its head and waited. In the living room sat a single wooden chest, the same shade of red as the walls. I knelt before it, inserted the key. It clicked open with a sound that echoed far deeper than the room. Inside, a bundle of letters, a worn photograph of my mother, younger, smiling, and a journal. I opened it, and read the first line. To my son, Ethan. If you are reading this, it means you became the man I never had the courage to be. My throat tightened. Tears blurred the pages. Each entry revealed a side of him I never knew. A man broken by his past, haunted by war, regret, and failure. But also, a man who loved, in his own shattered way. He had bought this farmhouse when I was a child, intended it to be a place of peace, but never brought us here, because he was afraid peace was something he did not deserve. In his final pages, he wrote, You do not need to repeat my story, Ethan. You have already rewritten it. I closed the journal, held it to my chest, and in that quiet farmhouse, I forgave him, not for what he did, but for not knowing better. Months later, I brought Grace and our son to the farmhouse. She stood on the porch and smiled. This place has bones, she said. Good ones. We decided to rebuild it. Not just the walls, but the spirit of what it could become. A home. A legacy. A beginning. Moral lesson. Pain will shape you, but it does not have to define you. We inherit more than blood. We inherit silence, fear, brokenness. But we also inherit the power to change the story. Love, when chosen over pride. Truth, when chosen over comfort. And forgiveness, when chosen over resentment, can transform a life, a family, a future. I denied what mattered once, but I chose to return. And because of that, my son will never have to wonder who he is. He will know, because I showed up. And that is what makes a man. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and remind someone today. You are never alone.